Hi, welcome to my Fusion 360 beginner videos. We're focusing on creating primitive shapes, and in this video I'm going to show you how to directly cut one shape from another shape. This method really can only be used well on primitives that have a flat face, which is why you see a cube on the screen. If you've seen my other video about combining primitives by drawing directly on a face, this is a very similar technique. But let's say I want to cut out a cylinder from the top of this, or from this cube. Or maybe even let's just start simple with a cylinder. So if I say that I want to create a cylinder, whenever you ask to create a primitive, it wants to know which plane to draw on. In this case, we're not going to draw directly on a plane. We're not going to draw to a plane in general. We're going to draw directly on one of these faces. So I click the top face here. If I draw my cylinder, when we were adding before, I pulled it up and just added it. In this case, if I pull it down, you can see that the cylinder turns red. And you can also see in the properties box over here that the operation has turned to cut. So if you're drawing with something else and you see red, it means it's going to cut. So watch what happens. Number one, keep in mind that my body 7 is my cube. When I click OK, I don't get a new body because what happened is that cylinder was cut from the shape I already had, which is pretty cool. So let me just rename this so we keep in mind that this is the cube. If I were to take, let's do a torus. This could be neat. Now the thing about a torus, I'm going to click this front face and I'm going to change my view a little bit so I can see better. So as I click the dimension of the torus, it automatically turns red. And the reason it automatically turns red is because when torus are drawn, half of it goes on the other side of the plane. So it's impossible to draw a torus directly on something else. Well, that's not true. But the default is that when you draw a torus directly onto the face of something else, it will default to cut. If you really wanted to add it on, you could click join here and it would add on. But we're looking to cut anyway, so I'll keep that as cut. And again, keep in mind, right now I only have my one body. When I click OK, I don't get a new body for the torus because it becomes part of the previous body. So that's pretty neat to be able to cut directly as you're going. If I wanted to say cut this whole corner off, one way to do that could be, or maybe I wanted to use a cylinder for that. So I'm going to go back to cylinder. I'm going to click the face of the cube again. I'm actually going to draw my base of the cylinder I want like this. Whoops, I forgot to click. There you go. And now when I pull this down, it changes that corner into a looped divot. So it's pretty easy to be changing the way primitives look by cutting pieces of them by using other primitive values. The sphere will also cut in similar to as the torus did. So if I click a cylinder here, it automatically embeds half of itself into the face, turns red, indicating the cut, and when I hit enter, you can see it has created a divot. It's actually a really easy way to create a die, which I do with my students in class a lot. So if we start with a cube, so I'm going to use the grid lines. Oops, that's the wrong shape, so I'll hit escape, go back to box, go back to the floor. I'm going to draw a cube 25 by 25 by 25. And so now if I choose a sphere and I start with the top edge, I can use the navigation bar to just look at the top. as I move my mouse around, it will help me find the center. So once I find the center, it's suggesting that I use a sphere of 4 diameter. I think that's pretty good. And as I said, it's going to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I have a little divot for my die. And I can just keep doing that. I can go back to sphere. This time I'm going to work on this face. I'm going to view it from that perspective. I think I'm going to put it right about here. Whoops. That's way too big, so I'll go back to 4, click OK, and it cuts out. I'll do another one, create sphere. Try to put it in the same place I put the first one. And click OK. And if I go back to the original view, you can see I've started to make a die. So cutting directly onto flat shapes of an existing primitive is a pretty easy way to cut other shapes into existing shapes. So I hope that was helpful for you.